or in the story shed. And with me is Andrew Parkinson, or better known as Parko, who just dropped in. And Andrew, you're with Scripture Union.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I've been with Scripture Union for nearly 8 years now.
Now, some people may not have a clue what Scripture Union is. Is it, is it a union movement or?
Scripture Union has been around for over 150 years. It started with an Anglican minister in England who was on holidays on a Welsh beach and saw a whole bunch of families and kids down on the beach, and he went, well, how would I tell them the good news of Jesus? I'll never see them in my church. And so he went down to the beach, down to the sand, and started writing in huge letters in the sand, God is love, and invited all the kids to come over and help him decorate the letters with, shells and seaweed. And as he was doing that, he was explaining what these words meant, God is love. And the kids loved it, and the parents loved it, and so they invited him back the next week. And that was the beginning of a movement which is now in 130 different countries, has been here in Australia since the late 1800s, and is involved in things like beach missions, carrying on the work of Josiah Spears way back 150 years ago. Rural missions, we have a mission just out here in Narromine. We have a mission every year in the little town that I come from, Blaney, out near Bathurst. We also do camps, so we run ag camps, sports camps, special interest camps. We've got computer camps, horse riding camps, shearing camp.
Sailing camps.
Sailing. Well, no, we don't have a sailing camp at the moment, but we do have a zookeepers camp.
Okay.
We had the owners of Shoalhaven Zoo, who are Christian, came to us and said, look, we own this zoo. Would you like to have a camp here? The kids can camp in the zoo and see behind the scenes. And we hesitated for about a nanosecond before we said, yes, please.
Yeah, well,
So every year we've got a group of kids that'll go down there and spend a week working behind the scenes with the animals, but learning about Jesus.
Now, Andrew, you've just come from the West. You've been
Yes.
out there at Cobar and Ningen.
Yep.
And dropped by. And you were talking about the struggles the churches are having, like they're shrinking, they're getting older.
Yep.
Trouble connecting to the schools, and in the schools with kids saying, well, you tell them about Jesus, so what? Like that disconnect, I suppose you'd say, with what has been traditionally in Australia, although people would deny it, the most powerful story in the country.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a challenge. What are you saying to people about meeting it?
Well, look, I think that we have to be creative. I believe that the world that we're living in now is very similar to the world of the Book of Acts, when the church wasn't in the centre of society. It was a small player on the outside.
The beginning of the church.
Absolutely, the very beginning of the church's existence. And so they didn't have the opportunity to invite lots of people to big rallies. They had to go where the people were. And so in Acts 17, we see that Paul started off speaking in the synagogues, where the religious people were, but then he went out into the marketplace. And I think that we need to get out into the marketplace.
So what's the marketplace now?
Well, look, it's those places where we can connect with the community around us. I'll give you an example. I was sitting in a little town called Temora just recently, and talking to the churches there, and they said, look, we've got a tiny little youth group, we've got a tiny little kids club, but we've got a huge school down the road. And I said, well, where are all of the kids from that school when they're not coming along to your kids program? And they said, sport. And I said, well, okay, so what are you doing to reach kids that play sport? And they went, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, they're all over there, you're over here. Instead of trying to get them to come to you, why don't you go to them? And I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to get out into the marketplace. We've got to go to the places where people are. I'll give you another example. I was just recently in Deniliquin, and talking to the Baptist minister out there. And at the end of last year, he got himself a dog, as millions of Aussies do. And he realised that his dog needed a bit of exercise. And there was an off-lead dog park in town. So he took his dog down there early one morning to let it run around, and there were a whole bunch of other people down there that had dogs. And he got chatting to them, and they found out that he was the local Baptist minister, and surprisingly that didn't kill the conversation, and they started getting to know each other. And it got to this year, to Australia Day, and he said, I'd really like to do something for these people. And so he got a few of the people from his church to help him. He went down there early that morning, set up a barbecue, took a little generator down there, set up his coffee machine, and as people arrived with their dogs, gave them a free bacon and egg sandwich and a cup of coffee.
The dog or the person?
No, the people.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
not the dogs. I'm sure that the dogs got something, but all of a sudden that became a ministry. Rather than trying to get those people who would never have come to the local church, the church went to them.
So you're saying too, Andrew, and this interests me a lot, because I think we're not listening carefully enough, because a lot of the sports clubs are actually asking for chaplains.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was chatting to a friend of mine who works for sports chaplaincy, and one of the areas that they're getting calls for is volunteer chaplains for local sports club, for junior sports. We've got chaplains in the armed forces, we've got chaplains in the military, we've got chaplains in almost every area. We've had chaplains in elite sport for a long time, but we've got all these junior sports clubs with real people going through real problems and real kids, and they're crying out for people who will come in there and be that person that they can talk to about their problems, so that person that they can open up to and tell their life stories, and just to travel with them and to love them. And that's where sports chaplaincy is training people to do that.
Okay, so you were saying too that, there's been a push in schools to say, well, we need to make Scripture or RE an elective, and we'll put in values training or values class as an alternative, which on the surface sounds okay, reasonable enough, but you were noticing a trend that there's something sort of missing in the values program that's not quite getting the rubber on the road, and people are starting to lean back to ask, well, where are the Scripture teachers? Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, in my little local school, ethics classes were introduced a number of years ago, and where it used to be that the majority of students would do Scripture. As soon as the ethics classes were introduced, those numbers dropped significantly to down around only half the kids, and half the kids would do ethics. But over the years, kids have started to drift back to Scripture. And I said right from the word go that the best way to respond to the introduction of ethics is not to complain or to get up in arms, but it's just to provide really high quality Scripture.
Do better.
And do better. And as we're doing that, we're doing high quality Scripture, kids are going, I want to be there. They're having fun. They're learning about Jesus. They're, doing stuff that interests me. And the ethics classes are really struggling, and the schools are really struggling with the ethics classes because the values aren't grounded in anything. It's very much social mores which are changing constantly.
Every week.
What's our values this week type thing, whereas the Bible is grounded in those things, and it's backed by a community that has, thousands of years of history, and people who are passionate about the Bible, about Jesus, and so that's what motivates them.
I think the thing that's forgotten, as you say that, when you talk about history or heritage and things like that, people think, oh yeah, whatever. But actually, from a scientific point of view, if you look at it that way, we look for laboratory testing, and you say, well, actually, this has been tested in a myriad of different places and times.
Absolutely.
And here's the proof. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we live in a time where we're being told that the church is dying. But how many times throughout history have we been told the church is dying, it won't be around? The old Time magazine article, God is dead. Well, it's 2024, and guess what? God is not dead alive and well. Schools are crying out for chaplains because they realise the necessity of not just intellectual learning, or academic learning, but spiritual, social values that the church brings, and so they're looking for chaplains. The church may not be growing numerically, but the church, the core of those Christians who are passionate about Jesus and are living that out in their daily lives, are alive and well.
Parko, you told me you went to the RFDS exhibition in Broken Hill. One of the things I know John Flynn used to work off was, if you want to commend your gospel, your good news to men, you first of all do something for them they understand.
Absolutely.
You must have stories like that.
Absolutely. And again, the number of times that I say to kids in schools or at camps that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And kids are asking the question, you can tell them all about Jesus, you can tell them all about the Bible, but the question they're asking is, so what? It might be true, but so what? What does that mean for me? How does that change my life? What do I do about it? And why would I do that? They're looking for meaning and purpose. They're looking for something that is going to matter. And the good news has it in spades.
And heroes that have done things. That's what I think.
Absolutely.
I remember in my own experience with Scripture Union, I went to a camp as a boy, an ISCF camp as it was called then, down in Mossvale. And the cricket coach was Brian Boo, the Test cricketer for Australia, a Christian man with a really just a quality character, and as a kid, I think, how good's this, like having a legend,
Absolutely.
And I think Scripture Union has done that sort of thing with young people. You've introduced us to men and women of calibre who've made a difference.
And even today, our rugby league camp that happens every year up in Tamworth is run by Alan Tongue, who was the captain of the Canberra Raiders. And his mum, who has been living on this farm in Tamworth. They have all of these kids come up to Tamworth and they run this rugby league camp. Why? Because Alan, even after he finished his career playing first grade rugby league, had a passion for sharing God's love with young people, because he knew that it could make a difference in their lives, that it made a difference in his. It made him the character that he was, where, he was one year voted as the Australian of the Year for the ACT. Why? His character had been shaped by his belief in the gospel.
So, wrapping up, I think, as you were talking, I was thinking, the ground you cover, like, it's a big area, Broken Hill, and
just that little patch between West. Lithgow and Broken Hill, only a few thousand k's.
About the size of England.
Yeah.
But not many people do that with the sort of intent and the purpose that you have. So that's outstanding. That's great. And I hope it encourages people to realise that there's still this level of vision and energy, and I think bright and clear ideas that could, transform kids' lives. So thank you very much, Andrew, for the time.
Oh, look, my pleasure.
And we hope that it sort of energises people out there when they hear your story, inspires them to want to be a sports chaplain or an RE teacher or get involved with ICF or whatever it is. Yep. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Good on you.
No worries.